Hi, I'm Nick Ibuki, and I'm going to do a quick introduction to grafting today. So, a few things we need. Number one, we had a tree here, a larger tree, that we're going to convert over to something else. So we didn't care for the variety we had before, so we're going to switch varieties here. So what we're going to do by doing that is we're going to save a bit of time, expense, and energy. So we got lots of irrigation already in place, infrastructure. So we're just going to basically do what's called top working. So what I've done here is I've cut this tree off, and I've left a nurse limb here. So the nurse limb here is basically going to take up the excess energy, because it's springtime. I have lots of energy in these roots that are way out to here, and they need a place to go. It thinks there's this big tree here, but now it just has, you know, if I leave it, it's just going to have a couple buds to go to. So this is going to help take out some of that energy there. So I've left a nurse limb. You can see I've cut it at a slight beveled angle there, and that's, if any rain hits it, it's going to fall off there. So to go with that, what I've also done is in February I went out and I collected first year shoots from last year, the nice vigorous shoots, and I've stored them in some damp newspaper, made damp with some soap water to keep any funguses and mildews at bay. And then I've wrapped it in wax paper to keep that moisture in there, and then I've wrapped that in plastic. A small package like this I can easily keep in the fridge. If you have a larger amount, you could do the old farmer's way. You dig a hole, you put it in some sawdust, some mulch, and bury it. And the nice cool ground, but not freezing, will keep it stable over winter time. So I've done that. I've taken my buds out here, and you can see I've cut them into scions here. This is now called a scion. It's about 3 to 4 buds on it, and I've used some hand clips to just kind of cut them. I don't look for where the buds are. I just kind of measure it with my hands and just cut a whole stack. And I just store them in a little yogurt container, and there's about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches of water in here to keep them moist. Alright, so I keep them in there. To make the cut, you can use a chainsaw with bigger trees. I just had some small ones. I just used a handsaw here. There is grafting tape, but I actually use a bit of flagging tape. There's different grades of flagging tape. I like to use this really nice thick stuff so I can get a nice good pull on it and keep it nice and tensioned in here. And then I use some actual grafting paint. I've seen people use the black emulsions, the asphalt paints, which are a lot cheaper, but here in the Okanagan, British Columbia, Canada, what happens is, you know, we can still get 25-30 degree days in the springtime, and you know, that's measured in the shade. That's a lot of heat for something that's black, and you know, you can cook the scions. You know, most years it won't happen, but it just takes that one time, and you don't want to lose all your trees just because I had a hot day and you cheaped out on one thing. So that's what I use there. Timing wise, we're doing it right now when the Amelanchier, the Saskatoon berries, are in bloom, the showy white flowers on the hillsides. There's also the Balsam Rhiza, the yellow little small flowers you see on the hillside. If you don't have either of those, a week after apricots bloom is another little timing cue around that time there. So I've got here a nice little area here, and I'm looking for a nice little flat spot. I'm looking for these flat spots. I don't want anything that's kind of knobby here, where when I cut it, the scion is going to kind of bump into things. Alright, so I look for these nice flat spots to decide where to cut. I've got one right here on this side, on my side here, this nice and flat. And the other thing I like about it is that's at the highest point in my cut. So it's going to have, you know, the plant hormones here are called auxins. We want to really keep those plant hormones where they go into the highest point, so that's a nice strong place to go. So I'm going to aim for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to, actually I'll do it right here. I'm just going to put a little flat cut in here. Goes right in like that. I give a little twist to my knife, and it slides really nicely. If it's really chunky or choppy in there, you probably won't have very good success. But because I'm right, this corresponds with the Saskatoons. There's nice and slippery and slick in there, and it's just that little, you know, 1/4 of a millimeter, that thin green layer. That's the cambium layer. That's the growing part of the tree. That's what we're trying to make contact with. So I take my scion here and I roll it around on my fingers. Just like I looked for a flat spot here, I'm looking for a flat spot on the stick, because all sticks have a little twist to them. So I see a nice flat spot there. Well, that's nice there. I'm going to start about 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 up. I want a nice long cut. So what I'm going to do, my knuckles are here, base of the knife, and just like a chef used the full blade, I'm going to use it and I'm going to finish off right up here. Okay? To explain why this works so well with my knife is I actually have a specific grafting knife. And the difference is, one side is completely flat and the other side is beveled. So it's not just a regular kitchen knife, it's actually specific to grafting this knife. So a flat side and a beveled side, so it is a right-handed, a left-handed knife. So I'm right-handed, I got a right-handed knife. I'm going to start right here, I'm going to make one cut, and you can see it was a nice long cut, and I use both hands. Because if I'm going to be cutting thousands of these in a day, if I'm doing a commercial orchard, I want to be using both arms to kind of displace that energy. And I've got a nice long cut, so I've got lots of that little green cambium layer exposed. I'm just going to do a little millimeter just at the base here, just taking off that sliver at the base on the side there, and a little one off the back right here, okay? And what that's doing is just exposing just a little bit more surface area of that cambium layer there, okay? I'm just going to use the back of my knife. I got a little bit of a nub that sticks out there. I twist it in there, and I slide it right in. You see here, it slides really nicely in there. I'm just going to push it in a little bit more, and really carefully. I stop just before, and you can see there's just a hair of green sticking out there. All right, so that's the perfect spot and the perfect depth there. Got my grafting tape here. Now, depending on the size of the tree, how much you need here. I'm going to start here. I'm going to start right at the base of my cut, and I'm going to give it a little stretch as I go. Okay, so I'm actually tensioning this tape as I go, and each wrap overlaps the previous one. And I'm going all the way up to the top here. A little bit of tension in here, and add a little bit extra, but that's okay. So I'm just going to actually allow it to fold in on itself so I can actually get even a little bit more tension, because now that I've covered everything up, I'm going to give it a good tie. Now, here's the test. If you're a good job of taping here, you can actually give that good firm, and it won't actually come out. So you can see the tree's actually giving a little shake as I'm trying to pull it out. It won't come out. So that's nice and tight in there. That's important. If it just pops right out, it's not tight enough. You want to keep that cambium layer nice and firm in there. Okay, so I made a nice cut. That was step one. Nice and tight. The last most important step is we want to really seal it in there. Okay, so I take this grafting paint, and myself, I like to start right at the tip here. And if we come in here just a little bit closer, we'll see right in here there's actually a little bit of a gap in here. So can you see this little gap here? So that's the next part I want to really get. So I'm going to really get the paint, and this stuff has a bit of latexy stuff in there, so that's actually going to seep in there. That's perfect. I want to make sure that's covered up. Okay? And on this side here where I cut it, I want to make sure I actually paint just below the tape there to make sure, just in case my cut went a little bit lower. And I'm going to paint all the way around here. And this full surface, I have a nice big fresh cut here. That's not very healthy in there, so I want to really paint that over. Okay? And what this is doing is keeping any bacteria or fungi out, so we have a nice healthy thing here. All right, so I'm going to come back after I did a full row. I'd probably come back and just check that nothing is kind of seeped in there. And you know, these ones here look good. And I might even come back the next day and actually check to see it hasn't kind of dropped in there. So I really want to keep any moisture out of there and keep that humidity in there and let it heal up. And in about 10 to 14 days, we'll actually see little green tips growing here, and away it'll go. I'm going to grow this tree. I expect to probably get about 4 to 5 feet of growth this year, and that's going to train out. Next year I'll come along, my nurse limb in the dormant season, I can kind of just trim it out back here, and I could actually graft this limb into the same variety next year, or I could just take it completely off depending on what I want. So that's grafting there. Happy grafting to you.